Let's jump right into this explainer, because the scale of the story we're about to unpack is absolutely massive. To really get it, I want you to step into a very specific set of shoes with me. Imagine it's the 1950s. You and I were policy advisors. We're sitting in a cramped, smoke-filled office in Bonn, which is the new provisional capital of West Germany. We're standing in the physical and moral rubble of the Second World War, and we are facing a totally impossible task. How on earth do we rebuild our nation's dignity? Well, we knew right away the answer wasn't going to be denying our dark past. We had to face it head on. So, what does this all mean? How did a nation that was completely devastated, carrying quite literally the heaviest moral burden in modern history, manage to transform from a global villain into a modern moral example? Looking at our office windows back in the 50s, the catastrophic aftermath was just everywhere. But the decisions we made in those absolutely crucial years, they laid the foundation for an unprecedented transformation. It was a journey of moving past grievances to actually rebuild our very soul. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the cost of grievance, then look at building a democratic cornerstone, and dig into the economic miracle. After that, we'll tackle working through the past, the power of reconciliation, and finally, reunification and beyond. Starting off with part 1, the cost of grievance, contrasting World War I and World War II. You see, to understand the decisions we made in the 50s, we first had to look backward and establish a really stark historical contrast. Think back to after World War I. The Weimar Republic completely refused to accept war guilt. The whole national mood was defined by grievance and denial. I mean, we literally printed money recklessly just to pay striking workers, which obviously led to catastrophic hyperinflation. Contrast that with our reality post-World War II. Under the Potsdam Agreement, the Allies mandated denazification. But honestly, more importantly, as advisors on the ground, we recognized we had to systematically accept responsibility. We just couldn't play the victim anymore. We had to undergo a total and very painful reset. Which brings us to our second point, building a democratic cornerstone with the Grundgesetz. We knew that if we were going to survive, we needed an entirely new political framework. So in 1949, we drafted our basic law, the Grundgesetz. But we kept it as a provisional document. We actually refused to call it a constitution until all of Germany was united. We deliberately took Western parliamentarism and synthesized it with our own state traditions, creating a stable, democratic party state. And we fiercely rejected the fatal flaws of the Weimar era, like having a too powerful president. We even included provisions that allowed the Constitutional Court to ban anti-democratic parties outright. Essentially, we built a democracy that was actively designed to defend itself. Moving on to part 3, the economic miracle and how we rebuilt the wealth. Because, let's be real, a democracy cannot survive on empty stomachs. In tandem with political stability, we needed an economic miracle, or, as we called it, a Wirtschaftswunder. Now, while foreign aid, specifically the U.S. Marshall Plan, definitely provided crucial capital, as policy advisors, we knew this rapid reconstruction was actually driven heavily by our own radical internal policies and the sheer resilience of our workforce. 90%. Just wrap your head around that for a second. That was the massive contraction in the money supply orchestrated by the brilliant economist Ludwig Erhard. To kill the rampant inflation and the black markets that were just choking our recovery, we did something drastic. We wiped out the old, worthless currency and introduced the stable Deutschmark overnight. Erhard's free market reforms were a real game changer, and they totally went against initial Allied expectations, which leaned towards strict controls. By introducing that Deutschmark, wiping out rigid price controls and ending rationing, Erhard brought goods back to store shelves almost instantly. We lowered wartime tax rates to incentivize our workers and sellers. By trusting those free market principles, we rapidly built a prosperous middle class, which, as you know, is the absolute bedrock of a new democracy. Now we have to shift to part 4, working through the past, the moral reckoning. All the wealth and political stability in the world couldn't buy back our dignity. We had to transition from economic success to a profoundly painful philosophical reckoning, facing the Holocaust. We actually coined a heavy compound word for this massive struggle, Vergangenheitsbewältigung, working through the past. True rehabilitation couldn't just mean hunting down a few top Nazis while the rest of society looked the other way. We had to recognize systemic corruption, earnestly accept our shame, and ensure every single citizen confronted this moral catastrophe. And the crucial point is, we did something totally unprecedented in world history. Instead of building monuments solely to our victories, We built monuments to our most shameful history right in the center of our capital. We mandated rigorous Holocaust education across the board. We practically weaponized our own vulnerability, facing our guilt hat in hand. We chose the study of our darkest hour over the repression of it to guarantee history could never repeat itself. Let's move to part 5 and see how this builds into the power of reconciliation and rebuilding trust. This internal moral reckoning, it became our greatest, most authentic diplomatic tool. But it brought up the ultimate question, the one that kept us diplomats awake at night. How do you apologize for the unforgivable? Words on a treaty are just paper, right? Well, fast forward from our smoky 1950s offices to the decades that followed, where this very foundation paved the way for a defining moment in 1970 with our Chancellor Willy Brandt. During a state visit to Warsaw, right after laying a wreath at the memorial for the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Brandt spontaneously dropped to his knees in silence. As he later reflected, "At the abyss of German history, I did what humans do when speech fails them. The Kniefall in Warsaw, it was just a breathtaking show of humility. It shocked the world and perfectly symbolized our policy of seeking genuine reconciliation with the East." Now, our approach to reconciliation definitely wasn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. With France, it was highly pragmatic, quickly institutionalized within the frameworks that would eventually become the European Union. With Israel, it was deeply moral and psychological, focused intensely on Holocaust remembrance and reparations. And with our eastern neighbors like Poland and the Czech Republic, it meant overcoming immense Cold War barriers and legally resolving deeply painful disputes over borders. We basically had to blend moral imperatives with pragmatic needs, uniquely tailored to our shared history with each nation. Bringing us to part 6, reunification and beyond, a nation whole. All of this patient diplomacy and careful economic growth led to the ultimate culmination of our post-war journey. Let's track it quickly. From the division into two Germanys in 1949, through the 1970 Treaty of Warsaw, to the miraculous fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and finally the 1990 2+4 Treaty. But here is what's vital to understand. The unified Germany was not a brand new state. No, it was an enlarged continuation of that exact same 1949 West German democratic state we had so carefully drafted the blueprints for back in the day. And to reassure the entire world that a united Germany would never again be a threat, we made the ultimate pragmatic and moral concession. We amended our beloved Basic Law. We finalized the Oder-Neisse line, constitutionally abandoning forever any claims to former Eastern territories. It was the ultimate proof to our neighbors that our commitment to peace and to permanently moving beyond past grievances was absolute.
Finally, our conclusion, from villain to moral example.
Looking back at the future we charted from those early, uncertain days in our 1950s Bonn offices, the journey is honestly almost unbelievable. We rose from the ashes to become a nation that anchors Europe and champions human rights. But it leaves us with a lingering, powerful question. Can a society ever truly erase its past? I believe our blueprint shows that no, you cannot. But perhaps a nation's ultimate dignity is actually found in never allowing itself to forget. By embracing responsibility rather than grievance, Germany transformed its absolute darkest legacy into a powerful lesson for the rest of the world. Thank you so much for walking through this incredible explainer with me.